Yo guys, it's Storm bringing you a new card review for the card Lasher. So Lasher is an activate card, 2 cost, 2 power card with the ability afflict an enemy card here with negative power equal to this card's power. Now Lasher is interesting. As you can see in the infographic here, I have given him a 4 out of 5 stars. I think he will be a decently strong card, possibly a 3.5 out of 5, but I do think that he does have some merit to him, and as time goes on he'll just become a stronger and stronger card. So let's get into the reasons why. So starting off, I just want to go over some of the pros to this card. Lasher has a powerful point swing. This card essentially doubles its power through negatively afflicting an enemy card by its power amount. So essentially this card will double itself. It'll basically take its power and reduce an enemy card on the other side of the field by the same amount. So you want to play this card with cards like Galacta, Forge, these cards that can really raise the power volume of Lasher's points, right? You know, they really boosted him up, so when he activates his ability, it's more devastating. You know, inflicting -2 power on a card is not a lot, but when you start inflicting 5, even 4, or if you can get this card really high, right, like maybe even like 6 or 7, it's actually gets pretty insane, the power point swing that Lasher can have. He fits perfectly in existing strong archetypes. Ajax Affliction, Clog, control based strategies are already decently strong, and now Lasher is a new and exciting option. So when I was thinking about decks that he would likely fit in, he definitely fits in Affliction, because, you know, his ability is to afflict -2 power. I do think that it won't be his final home, because his ability is very specific. He wants to be boosted first and then afflict, because essentially if you leave Lasher alone and he just activates his ability, he's just a 2/4, you know, overall power wise, he's just a 2/4, and 2/4 is not that good. It's not. I don't think Lasher is a card that can hold the lane on its own if you're playing him in just Clog or just Affliction strategies. This card will definitely pop off if you're running him in a deck that already wants to buff up cards in their hand or on their field. So I think eventually this card will reach probably Surfer decks, definitely reaching just kind of like, you know, the Okoyes, those kind of decks where it's like they're just adding power. I even think the way that the card is worded, Cerebro, or cards that give Lasher temporary power, you know, so like Blue Marvel or just cards like that, right? Like it's not permanent power, but the card doesn't specifically state that it has to be permanent power. It just says afflict negative power equal to this card's power. So I do think that there might be some kind of way you can even cheat Lasher, you know, cheat Lasher's effect and afflict a lot of negative power to a singular card. So yeah, we'll see as time goes on. Okay, the third one here, low cost activate card allows Lasher the agency to choose when to inflict the negative power. Early plays allows early point swings for priority. Later plays allows for stronger point swings. You know, you have the agency to use this ability. It's not an on reveal, so you can use this on turn 5. You know, you put him down turn 2, you got him big enough, he might be a 2/5, 2/6, boom, right? You put him down late, he's only a 2/4. So, you know, it's kind of like a, you know, it kind of depends on when you want to use him, when you're allowed to use him, depending on your draws, right? But you place him down early and you have that agency to knock something down early. Let's say they happen to put a Deadpool down and you put Lasher down, perfect target. You turn that Deadpool from a 1/1 to a 1/1. Now every time they destroy Deadpool, it's doubling negative power. So that's just a situation where Lasher can definitely kind of like clutch it out for you. So we have a bread and butter section here. So the bread and butter section is usually reserved for cards that will definitely go, you know, in hand with Lasher. So some of the cards that I place here are the power gain archetype. So you have Ironheart, Forge, Galacta. Gwenpool is also in this archetype. These are cards that will just add power to Lasher so that his point swing is stronger. Affliction, Hazmat, Ajax, High Evo. Now I put High Evo here, right? I know it's a struggling archetype. I think High Evo actually will go really great with this card. because High Evil already wants to you know, inflict some of those cards on the enemy side with negative power so they can get a cheaper Abomination. I do think Lasher will fit in there somehow, some way, maybe, but it will be also a natural fit with the Ajax decks and Hazmat decks, right? Clog. People might avoid playing Lasher in a certain lane, right? Because they don't want to be inflicted with negative energy. That's where Clog comes in handy. You throw a Green Goblin over, that becomes a instant 3 -5 if you decide to use Lasher early, or even more. It can actually be pretty insane what you can do with this card. And control. So the reason why I say control is because Lasher is a 2/2, I think he goes perfectly with Jean Grey. Jean Grey is also not a really good card. I've been hoping for a long time that she gets better, but when you put Jean Grey down, it's going to force them to play there too. So no more trying to avoid Lasher. I think even just the presence of Lasher will create kind of a like, I have to avoid this, right? I have to avoid this lane, right? Kind of the opposite of a Nebula, where I have to play in this lane to counter Nebula to stop that PowerPoint game. Well, people aren't going to want to play where Lasher is going to activate his ability, right? So I do think control is going to be pretty good. And Jean Grey actually might really benefit from this card. So yeah, so those are just the general points for pros for Lasher. I do think he'll be a generally 4 out of 5 5-star card, possibly 3.5. I'm kind of reaching because I really want the Jean Grey strategy to work. Really been wanting her to work for a long time here, and I do think this card is good. I think its base stats are not. Again, he becomes a 2/4 essentially. You know, you afflict that -2 power. He's still 2/2, right? But like overall, it's 2/4. But I do see him doing a lot. So yeah, let's move on to the cons. All right, so let's touch on the cons, right? Lasher is a low power card, even with afflicting a card with his base power. It's also weak to other affliction based strategies. So I touched on this already. Essentially a 2/4 is not good. But if this card gets inflicted with negative energy, it becomes like absolute garbage. If you put Lasher to a -1 just with one Hazmat activation and you try to activate this card, he's only inflicting -1 power to an enemy card. That's horrible. If this card gets hit by Cyclops even twice, or the Thing, right? This card is very, very, very vulnerable to affliction based strategies, which is funny because that's the kind of ability that it has. It wants to do that. So if Lasher gets hit by another Lasher, it's kind of like, well, GG, bro. You're not gonna be doing anything. So that is a huge con for the card. I think running Luke Cage will always be pretty smart for people who's gonna run this card. Maybe, because not everyone runs affliction, but we'll see. So on to the second one. Due to it being an activate card, playing this on turn 6 is a weak 2 power play. The cards that directly counter it are the most popular cards in Snap: Red Guardian and Luke Cage. So Luke Cage's presence makes this card just a 2/2, not even a 2/4, which is like horrible. Like it's insane how bad that is. And Red Guardian, on the curve, as soon as you play Lasher down, and if you don't play Lasher in a lane where there's already a card, you're gonna get no value out of it. Red Guardian is gonna turn off your ability and set this card to a 2/0. Horrible. Both of those cards are very popular. Luke Cage and Red Guardian are everywhere. So I think that's a huge con against Lasher. I think as more cards come out that become, I would say, more counters to the counters, right? So we really do need something in the game that can go against Red Guardian and Luke Cage, because those are some of the biggest problems in the game. Not problems, but you know, they're problematic in their own way. Lasher is kind of held back because of just those existence, right? The existence of these two cards. And the third one is Lasher's effectiveness heavily depends on being part of a deck built around activate or affliction strategies. Players running general purpose or hybrid decks will often find Lasher underwhelming compared to more universally useful cards. So because Lasher is kind of he's not super specific, I think that he can fit in a good amount of decks. He might not be the best 2-drop for that deck, but if you wanted some flavor, or if you wanted to do something different, I think Lasher will be a good replacement for that. Because his base stats aren't the best, I think the decks that want to go straight, you know, over the top with power are definitely going to run over this card. And there's a lot of that running around ever since Serta has been released. It's just a lot of strong, high power cards in the game at the moment. So I think that is something to kind of pay heed to. But the best thing about Lasher is that you don't have to pay for him. He's part of the high voltage event. So hey, there you go with that. And let's go over, we talked about his other two counters, but I would say one notable third counter is Shadow King. So the reason why Shadow King is a problem is because it essentially nullifies any kind of negative impact that you've done to the enemy team, right? To the enemy card set. Even if you built up your Lasher to a 2/6 and then you inflict that, Shadow King just resets the power you gain and the power that has been afflicted. So Shadow King out here doing crazy work again. This card is ridiculous. Once again, it'll never fall out the meta because its power is just too insane. And that is something that should also be watched out for, because Shadow King is definitely a card that has played just as much, if not more, than Red Guardian and Luke Cage. So yeah, so that's my card review on Lasher. I would just generally say my overall, like, you know, closing thoughts on it is Lasher is a niche card with potential in activate or affliction focused strategies, but struggles to shine in the current meta due to its low versatility, reliance on synergy, and vulnerability to popular counters. Players should consider its situational value carefully before adding it to their deck. Again, the card is free as long as you play enough high voltage, which is a fun game mode. So definitely, once we get into, you know, everybody's hands, let's play around with it and see what we can do. I think it's an interesting card, especially that we're getting for free. And I'm excited to try it out, you know, especially in that the Jean Grey strat that I mentioned. So yeah, thank you guys for getting through the video. Definitely check out my other content. I stream on Twitch Mondays through Thursdays, and Storm is out. Peace out.